How did somebody you know ruin their life in one day? My dad used a dirty needle while doing drugs and got HIV. In 2008, he told us he was living with AIDS because of that. One day, we have helped pay for the meds or his bills because he paid for his meds and didn't have the money ever since. Last summer he got COVID, and when the doc was talking to my sister on the phone, she asked what special treatment he would need to have due to having AIDS. His doctor of 20 years said, "What? He doesn't have AIDS. We haven't talked to him since." Added for clarification. At the time, he said, he had been living with HIV for years, and that it developed into AIDS for not treating it. I was 16 and dumb. No, I didn't sit down and interrogate my father for hours to make sure he wasn't lying. How dare I not know, right? He gave permission to the doctor to speak to my sister about his medical treatment. No laws broken. The doctor clarified. It wasn't a 2 minutes conversation. He had been seeing my dad as a patient for 20 years, and knew his medical history. He was as upset as we were that he lied. After finding out, me and my sister confronted him, and he admitted to it all. He never had HIV or AIDS. It was all a lie. Tried to kill themselves by jumping off a bridge, survived, paralyzed from neck down. Edit, it was a female. That's basically trying to escape hell and landing right in it. That's a fate worse than death. Edit, just woke up to many replies, and 7.4k upvotes later, on a random comment I made. Anyways, I am lucky to be alive. I remember standing on top of tall buildings remembering some of what you all are saying. The last time I was over a highway overpass, and I was about to let go, fall off. I pulled myself back up, and called my mom. Told her everything I kept secret, because I really didn't know how to communicate, until I was close to 30. That was 4 years ago. My life has gotten so much better from that day, and recovery took so long. Love and loving yourself is worth the time it takes to acquire. I hope all of you find that. I'm sorry if my comment hurt some. I was talking about this case, and not paralyzed people, overall. My daughter's middle school teacher exchanged nudes with a 14-year-old on Discord across state lines. Jesus F, why these guys think they'll get away with it. Yeah, now he's in one of the worst New Jersey county jails. Shit is in the paper, and his career is over obviously, but, damn. When I was going to elementary, we had a teacher who was accused of touching children, but turned out never did. As a kid, I didn't understand the situation, but as an adult I realize how insanely challenging it would have been to return to work and look at colleagues and parents of students in the face after having your name dragged through the mud like that. More like a day horribly altered my life. I was a teacher and coach. For a field trip, the principal could not afford 2 buses. So, I had to walk about 10 girls to the field trip location and back to school, while the one bus was filled with the rest of the junior high students and faculty. About a mile each way. I chose the girls of my team because they would listen to me outdoors, unlike lots of middle school kids, while crossing the street in the crosswalk, with the walk signal in our favor. All the kids went first, and like girls, they're clumped together and chatting while walking. I noticed a woman made a left turn into our crosswalk, and never saw us, as she tried to accelerate, to beat an oncoming car. I knew she was going to run right through the girls. I pushed the kids forward, very forcefully. Most of the girls fell onto the pavement in front of other vehicles, waiting at their red light. They were badly scraped up, like road rash, from me pushing them. But no hospitals or doctors were needed for their scrapes. I don't remember the impact. I remember seeing a Pontiac symbol between the headlights. I came to, and I was in a whole different lane, and facing where I had just come from. I could not get up. They say, my body went up the car, and off the driver's side, tearing the side mirror off the car, and breaking her windshield. Horror and sobbing from my student athletes. The girls raised me onto a backboard when the ambulance came, which must have been traumatic. Now, 20 years later, I am still an ambulatory wheelchair user. Can't teach or coach. Can't work at a desk. I have chronic pain. Yes, my life can be really sucky, but I would not change what I did that day. When I get low emotionally, from all my limitations, I remember those girls. I watch them go to college, get married, grow into mothers, and hold impressive jobs in their fields. And when they show a photo on Facebook of their happy moment, it recharges me to know they are safe, healthy, and happy. And it reaffirms my decision to save them from harm. He got drunk, got in his car, drove 90 miles per hour, missed a red light, and killed my niece, and 3 other people. He's been in prison since 2009, and still has 6 years to go, as he plead out to 4 counts of manslaughter. Had a dental school classmate, who used to be a police officer, speed down the highway in his cop car at 110 miles per hour, because he was scared to miss his online history exam, and killed a car full of people. Was only in prison for 2 years, and got into dental school, and got his dental license, and practices dentistry, and has his own office. Like how? So awful. I distantly know somebody, who tried to cross the US-Canadian border, without declaring more than $10,000 in cash, which led to them searching all his stuff, and finding no porn on his computer. He's in jail. Was he a dance instructor by chance? Because this same thing happened to someone I knew. Yep. That's him. Maybe you two know each other. Maybe this is just a common thing among dance instructors. Guy I knew in uni was inebriated and decided to try and clear a very tall spiked wrought iron fence. He impaled his balls and did not get to keep them. That was the toll gate. For whom the balls toll? Reminds me of my favorite joke. A man wakes up in hospital after being in a coma. The doctor tells him, "I have some good news and some bad news." "Okay, what's the good news?" "We managed to save your penis." "That's great. And the bad news?" "It's in this jar." A friend of my parents was a good family man who loved his family. One day, he was playing with his toddler and was playfully tossing her on the bed. She would get back up giggling, and he would toss her again. In one of the tosses, he threw her a bit too far, and she hit a bedpost. She lived, but became bedbound, unable to even talk. Not quite vegetable, but close. He went to jail on child abuse. Lost his wife, his job, and his little girl would never be the same. The guilt was so much, he ended it as soon as he could. I think this is one of the most depressing stories on here. It was an accident. Father of 2 here. Like most dads, I often play with them. Bit of rough and tumble, but nothing dangerous. But even when you're being careful, sometimes they'll move, or twist, in an unexpected way, that suddenly makes the situation quite perilous. On a few occasions, I've definitely had my heart in my mouth, as you watch with horror, as a safe situation turns into something potentially life-threatening. Then sometimes random shit happens. My 3-year-old son was sitting on this chair, putting his shoes on. Out of absolutely nowhere, the understairs cupboard door literally just fell off its hinges and started falling towards him. It's not the biggest or heaviest door in the world, but it was tipping fast, and the corner was going right for his head. I managed to throw myself into it before it hit him, and broke 2 of my fingers in the process. Life is scary. Assuming this was indeed just a tragic error of judgment, my heart bleeds for that guy. A 19-year-old guy in Sydney ate a slug for a dare. Got rat lungworm disease. Went into a coma for 18 months, woke up a vegetable, confined to wheelchair, needing 24-hour care. Died about 10 years later. From eating a single slug. Australia or no, eating or handling wild slugs or snails is a very bad idea. They can carry so many parasites, they literally have a mucous membrane in constant contact with the ground and dirt. Of effing course, they're going to accumulate soil-borne and waterborne pathogens. Most of those pathogens are harmless to the slugs, because they've adapted to live with them. We haven't. You can contract anything from tetanus, to lungworm, to cholera, to all flavors of meningitis, by consuming uncooked gastropods, and many gastropod parasites can be transmitted by touch alone. A buddy from high school blew through a stop sign and hit a couple of motorcyclists, killing them both. He didn't stop to render aid and fled the scene. He was busted for vehicular manslaughter and spent 12+ years in prison. He's lucky he can work for his dad, because where he lives now is not kind to felons trying to rehabilitate. Dude several years our junior, on the fringe of the friend group, was spiraling into depression. Decided to end it with a shotgun. Didn't get the angle right. Blew his jaw and face off. Literally. It's not for nothing that I've said ever since, there are worse things than dying. Wow. So many activity. Please, if you're considering self-harm, seek help. There are those who care and will listen, whether you currently think so, or not. If nothing else, come to Reddit, tell us what's eating you, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. by how much positive feedback you receive. Similar thing with a high school acquaintance of mine. He shot himself in the face with a revolver and lived. Not long after, he was convicted of a drug charge. In the courtroom, he told the judge that he would not be going to prison. The judge disagreed and gave him a prison sentence. He then pulled out a shiv and sliced his own throat in front of the courtroom. He died from the injury. Guys got drunk in HS, drove off the highway, didn't make the turn, at 90 miles per hour. 5 dead. Same from a high school near me. Drunk driver crashed, and 4 kids burned to death. The drunk driver lived. I hate alcohol so effing much. A dude from my high school had to come to our school and talk about how he was drunk driving and ended up killing his friend. After he left, everyone in the class collectively agreed that he did not seem remorseful at all. A week ago, my little sister slipped on the ice getting out of her car and hit her head. She didn't think much of it when she had a pounding headache later, figuring she just whacked herself good. Her friend told her to just sit down and take it easy until she started slurring her words, roughly 10 hours after the fall. They called an ambulance for her, but she was going into cardiac arrest. Turns out, she'd stopped taking her blood thinners she was supposed to be on for clotting issues. The headache wasn't the fall, it was the clot in her leg, cutting off blood to the brain. At the age of 26, she never recovered, and leaves behind a 4-year-old and 2-year-old. When my wife was on thinners for a clot in her leg, it left her dizzy and kind of out of it for a while after taking it. One day, she tripped over one of our kids' toys and fell over. Went to the ER, as she was instructed to if she ever fell while on the thinners. She ended up being fine, but said once she got, "I'm on blood thinners," out of her mouth, people came out of nowhere, and a sense of urgency was present that she'd never seen from an ER staff. In college, my ex's friend was pulled over for speeding. He had drugs and alcohol in his system, and when the cop reached in his truck to grab the keys, he panicked and took off, thinking the cop would let go. The cop did not let go, and was dragged for quite a ways, before eventually falling to the ground and hitting his head, resulting in his death. My ex's friend was charged with capital murder and sentenced to 20 years in a Mississippi state prison. 21 years old, and ruined his entire life in one night. 3 guys in high school decided to speed on the back roads after practice. Lost control, driver was decapitated, passenger, who was being scouted, had severe brain damage, and unable to walk, eat, etc. on his own, and the third may have walked away, but for the rest of his life, will have to live with the trauma. Great bunch of guys. Just heartbreaking. Friend of mine, from a wealthy Middle Eastern country/family, didn't quite ruin his life, but effed it up for a while. Was in Canada on a student visa, but was working after graduating and had applied for permanent residency. Got rejected, so he took out every credit card he could find, and ran them all up, because he was leaving the country forever that week. Tells his parents he is coming home and why. Mom makes a few phone calls and turns out, the kid had screwed up some paperwork, and it was no problem to get it fixed up and approved. That was 15 years ago, and he still lives here, but his credit card debt was more than his annual salary, and his parents, correctly, told him he was an idiot and to pay it himself. He also lost out on a job opportunity the next year, because his credit was such a disaster. My friend's wife was diagnosed with cancer. The doctors said she had about a 10% chance of surviving. She scheduled her surgery for a month out, and without telling him, took out several credit cards in just her name. She ranked up $100,000 in debt in that month, flying around the world, and doing everything on her bucket list. She had the surgery and chemo after and lived. She was fine. That debt completely effed up their lives for about 10 years. Edit, I guess I should a couple of things. 1, the husband, my friend, knew she was traveling. He saw the roughly $10,000 added to their joint credit card. He did not know she had taken out credit, and was hiding an additional $90,000 in debt. 2, his wife honestly thought she would die, and then the credit cards would close the accounts, and the family would owe nothing. Which is not exactly how it works. So luckily, that did not happen. 3, yes, it effed up a lot of things. He lost his DoD security clearance because of it. People with a lot of debt can be bought. And he took a less paying job as a federal contractor, where I met him. But he honestly does not regret it, and is happy to have his wife and kids all alive. Kid down the street had his best friend over, and his friend, being a 12 to 13-year-old boy, was being a total D-head. Kid picks up a shotgun, his brother left lying around in the dining room, and aimed at friend. Friend taunted him. Kid pulled the trigger, and filled his friend's head full of buckshot. Two families instantly devastated. Kid went to jail. I occasionally see the friend when I go out for a walk. He's a grown-up now, but is intellectually maybe 4 to 5 years old, and will be taken care of by family for the rest of his life. Yes, the friend lived, though with a lot of brain damage. I knew some boys at my school had a similar story, but they were brothers. Cleaning the guns and fooling around. One brother put the gun to his brother's head and pulled the trigger. The kid died. No jail or anything, but he was not ever right. Awful tragedy. Edit: this comment got a large response, so I'd like to add some detail. I live in New Zealand, and this was in the 80s. No handguns, so it was rifles. Probably a .22. I grew up in the country, and it was not uncommon in those days for primary-aged children to handle and use guns. These boys knew or should have known what they were doing, but yes, should have also had parental supervision for many reasons. We were Gen X, where were our parents? I went to a friend of a friend's house in 7th grade. Nobody was home, and he said, "Hey, let me show you my dad's guns." He came back to his bedroom with a 1911 pistol. He said, "This gun has a really cool feature, where if something is pressed onto the front of the barrel, the gun won't go off. Let me show you." So, he grabbed me in a headlock, jammed the barrel to the side of my head, and pulled the trigger. I heard a loud click. Thankfully, the magazine was loaded, but his dad didn't keep around in the chamber, or I would have been dead. Friend's son was with his recently engaged fiancée, who had a serious nut allergy. They were driving, not far from Bendigo. They stopped off at a cafe to buy sandwiches. The woman running the cafe assured them there were no nuts anywhere near the sandwiches, so they bought them, then went on their way. Driving out away from town, she was nibbling on the sandwiches when she struggled to breathe. He stopped the car, got out, figured what was going on, went to the back of the car to get her EpiPen, which he struggled to find, but by the time he did find it, she was dead. A couple of weeks after the funeral, he got in his car, drove it back to the stretch of roadside where she died, put his foot down on the accelerator, and deliberately aimed his car at a power pole. He'd left his mum a note. Addendum: for anyone wishing to blame someone for this, I need to make it clear that the contamination turned out to be an accidental tainting of a bread batch. The cafe owner did not know about it, nor did the bakery, until this incident. Worked in Seattle Airport, and a co-worker decided to take his own life by stealing an airplane, flight in loops around the Pacific Northwest airspace, while being chased by the Air Force, until finally going nose down. Oh man, I remember that. I worked for an airline, and plenty of us have thought about stealing a plane, but to actually see it happen. If it had a happier ending, he probably would go to prison, as some sort of ramper folk hero. My favorite part is, when he is talking to ATC, and wants the location of the orca that had been in the news for pushing around her dead baby in Puget Sound for a number of days. He says something to the effect of, "I want to go check out that little dude." For some reason, it really humanized the guy in a very strange situation. Childhood friend who relapsed from a drug addiction. He ingested fentanyl. Died all alone in a filthy basement. He had been looking healthier. We reconnected, and he was planning his life going forward sober. That hurt a lot, that hope being taken away in a few minutes. Opiates, fentanyl, and those who deal it. Too many lives lost, every day. I saw a documentary one time about drugs, and they interviewed a drug dealer selling fentanyl. He said something along the lines of, "It's their choice, and at the end of the day, I gotta eat." This world is effed up, man. Worked with a guy. He made his kids ice cream, drugged one bull, then put that kid to bed. Once the other kid went to sleep, he shot and killed her. Then went to the other kid's room, the drugged one, shot and killed her. Then called up his wife, shot and killed himself on the phone with her. F you Mark. F you. He had just turned 19. Summer after senior year. Dad owns a very lucrative lumber sales and construction company. He got a brand new truck for graduation, and was going to start his job, after summer ended, with his dad. Trained to be a foreman, and basically be set for life, on a path to retire, extremely comfortably. by the age of 55. He decided to take a bunch of pills and ran a red light. T-boned a car, killing the driver instantly, and crippling the passenger for life. He got off with vehicular manslaughter, because his dad forked out big money to get the charges lessened. He served 13 years, and got out last year. He just walks around the town now, because he can't get work, own a license, or vehicle. Middle management type man, where I used to work, came into the office every other day. He was known to be a stand-up guy, good family man, even a good boss, as good as it gets, when it comes to management, at least. He got caught having sex with the new hire. Lost his job, his marriage, and his kids stopped talking to him. That was 2 years ago. Last news I got, he's living in a studio apartment with a mattress on the floor, and already spent half his savings on alcohol. Stood in the wrong place. He was stood in a bar minding his own business, and a fight broke out. He caught an accidental blow to the back of the head, and caught his head on a wall, on the way down. He never woke up. I was standing at a crowded bar, when I was in my mid-20s, waiting to get drinks for me and a girl I liked, that I had come with. A disagreement between two other guys broke out behind me, but it was so loud I didn't know. The one guy pulled a knife, and drunkenly lunged at the other guy. Completely missed, but stabbed me, in the right buttocks. I had no idea what happened. It felt like a nerve cluster in my back, just randomly exploded. I fell over, and it only occurred to me that I had been stabbed, after I saw the blood. I was okay, overall. Missed a few weeks of work, because I couldn't sit, or walk. Played a lot of Nintendo DS, while laying down. The guy served a very light sentence, 2 months, after pleading down from attempted murder. He wrote a very sincere apology letter, and I agreed to meet him in person, where he apologized again. At his court case, when I gave a statement, I made it clear to the judge that there was no need to ruin his whole life over a mistake. Heck, my work even covered my wages throughout my absence, and it's Canada, so, no medical bills. This was 18 years ago. I snoop the guy on social media every now and then, and he's married now, has kids, a whole career. Seems to be doing well. Happy for him. Could have been a lot worse. We were both pretty lucky. The worst part was that the girl I came with that night had left with some other dude, and had no idea it happened, until a mutual friend told her, the next day. LOL.